Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I welcome everybody to today's edition of Drug Information Specialist Clinical Meeting. I'm Dr. Faith Iriferi, and I'm the moderator for tonight's presentation. We're going to follow this agenda. We'll start with the opening prayer. We're going to recognize the Drug Information Specialist Executive Committee members. We'll introduce the speaker. We'll have the lecture for about 40 minutes, question and answers session for about 15 minutes, and then closing remark and vote of thanks, and then of course, closing formalities. So I want to crave our indulgence to please take 1 minute to pray according to our different faiths, and then we can begin. Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody again. I think we're done with that. We're just going to go ahead with the other aspects of the agenda. And so I welcome everyone again to tonight's presentation. And I want to recognize the members of...
coming back.
Hello?
Yes, I'm listening. We are listening.
Okay. So I welcome everyone again. Yes, yeah, we can hear you. I welcome everyone again to tonight's presentation. And I want to recognize the executive committee members of the Drug Information Specialist Group, chaired by Pharmacist Mrs. Folashade Lawal, FPSN. I don't think she's around now, but we'll have the vice chairman, who is our own Dr. Ibrahim Bello. So you're welcome. We also have Fam Folake Omolola Wokoma, who is the secretary of the Drug Information Specialist Group. And others who I don't think are present, but I think I can just run through the names, if that is okay. We have Dr. Ijiro as the PRO, and then we'll have the Education Committee Chairman, Dr. Mrs. I.O. Joe, and Dr. Rukayat, the Education Committee Secretary, and others. So I welcome everybody, senior pharmacists, others who have made themselves available, and I believe we're going to enjoy ourselves with the presentation that will be given tonight. So I think I should go to the next agenda, which is the introduction of the speaker. We have Pharmacist Scholastica Lan, FPSN, as our speaker for tonight. And we're on module 22, which is Pharmaceutical Industry and Regulatory Affairs. Now, as a way of introduction, Pharmaceutical Scholastica Lan, FPSN, she has a B.Pharm, Masters in Public Health, MSc, FPC Pharm, and of course, she's a fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. She is a public health consultant, a World Bank trained environmentalist, past chairman, Association of Lady Pharmacists, Lagos State chapter, the past assistant secretary, Association of Lady Pharmacists National, past editor-in-chief, Eco-Pharmacist, PSN Lagos State, past publicity officer, WAPCP Nigerian chapter. She's also a malaria vaccine advocacy fellow, the executive director, State Environment and Communities Development Initiative, and she's the superintendent pharmacist, Vine Shield Healthcare Limited, Makurdi. I have the honor to present, or rather, give the floor to our presenter, Pharm Scholastica Lan, to begin her presentation. The floor is yours, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Drug Information Specialist, Dr. Bello, Pharmacist Lawal, my colleague, Dr. Faith, and other pharmacists joining for the presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Welcome to today's presentation, Model 22 of our series of presentations we've been having over the year. And today we're talking about regulatory affairs in pharmaceutical services or drug regulation in the pharmaceutical sector. My name is Pharmacist Mrs. Scholastica Lan, Fellow of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. You're welcome. I'll be sharing my screen. So we have our group members as listed, and so Model 22 is pharmaceutical industry and regulatory affairs. These are members of the team. We're a 7-member team as apportioned by the committee. And the objectives of the model is to understand what regulation is and the types of regulatory processes in pharmaceutical companies, know what the functions or regulation is in drug safety and efficacy, discuss the opportunities for pharmacists in the regulatory sector, know some of the important regulatory organizations across the world, and get an overview of some of the regulatory agencies we have in Nigeria. So this is the outline. What is regulation? Importance of regulation of the pharmaceutical sector, the role of pharmacists in regulation, the National Drug Regulation Agencies, challenges affecting regulation, and conclusion. So what is regulation? Pharmaceutical regulation means the control of drug and medicines and other medical or biological devices by regulatory authorities to ensure the safety, efficacy, and quality. This is achieved by following and practicing good practices in the manufacturing sector, like good manufacturing practices, GMP. And drug regulation is also said to be the totality of all measures, legal, administrative, and technical, which governments take to ensure the safety, efficacy, and quality of drugs, as well as the relevant and accurate information available concerning the drug. Drug regulation is a public health and safety concern, which have made governments to be obliged to intervene in the activities of the pharmaceutical sector. In continuing with understanding what drug regulation is, it also could be said to be a variety of actions, which could be guidelines, recommendations, standard operating procedures, policies that have legal bases and authorities. Some countries have tried to differentiate between pharmaceutical legislation and pharmaceutical regulation. There is a slight difference between those two. So for us to understand it better, regulations are rules established by an agency which interprets the laws made to facilitate the practical implementation, and they are often passed more easily and quickly. And on the other hand, legislation specifically is a creation of the laws of a country and are usually written as documents for use in the present and in the future. And they have languages that enable the government to issue regulations, and people could be prosecuted when legislations are disobeyed. So legislation requires the government's legislative body, and it takes a longer process. What is the goal of pharmaceutical regulation? It has two main goals: the development and production for market of new and effective therapeutic agents and the protection of the patient from unsafe or misbranded products. So there's a structure that drug regulation follows, a 5-level structure. Drug laws, which provides the basis for regulation, the agencies that implement the laws, drug evaluation boards, like you have the clinical trial committees, and then you have the quality control laboratories and the drug information centers, which our group, drug information services or drug information specialists, fall into, which is why the basis for which we're having this series of presentations, so that we understand our role in ensuring the safety and efficacy of drugs. We serve as a pool of information to the larger body. And drug information centers are very, very important because people could call upon you to provide the necessary clearance or clarity the need concerning a drug. And we as drug information specialists must be up and doing and very abreast with very important topical issues relating to drug safety and efficacy. And so it's really a big honor and privilege that this committee or this group has come up for us as pharmacists in Nigeria, and we cherish it dearly, and we believe that all that we have been able to handle in the series of presentations over the years will better our work as pharmacists. So why do we have to regulate the pharmaceutical sector? Basically because of the use of substances that are toxic, or the presence of impurities, or drug claims that are not verified, or where there are severe adverse reactions, or there are substandard preparations or counterfeits. All of these problems are better tackled when there's an effective drug regulatory system. We have witnessed this in the country. We remember our late colleague, Professor Dora Akuli, when she was on board, and all she put in to ensure that we had a safe and sound regulatory system, which almost cost her life over the years. So it's important that the pharmaceutical sector is regulated for all that will be related to drug safety. We had some unfortunate incidences over the past because of the use of substances that caused either deaths or severe ADRs, adverse drug reactions to people. For example, coming back home to Nigeria, we have the My Pikin story, the use of vaccines in northern Nigeria, the thalidomide experience in the 60s, which caused birth defects in children, mercury poisoning in Nigerian children that were mining, lead poisoning. These are some of the unfortunate incidences that happened over time because of use of substances that were either toxic or unsafe in products. These are pictures of issues we had with drugs. Thalidomide causes birth defects in children or fetuses. My Pikin story led to the drug being withdrawn from the Nigerian pharmaceutical market. Pfizer had to pay some huge amounts of money as compensation because of the vaccine that was used on some Nigerian population. So these and many more are some of the reasons we have that makes it mandatory or makes it very important to have drug regulation or pharmaceutical regulation. Like I've said earlier, problems are related to the safety and quality of drugs or medicines exist around the world, particularly for us in the developing countries. We are almost like a dumping ground, and quality, maintaining quality, getting the right drugs in the right way they should be, it's a very big challenge which we pharmacists are all facing. Then because of incidences of tragedy and all that has to do with drugs that cause reactions in people. Drug regulation is there for a public policy response to the perceived problems or perceived needs of the society regarding drug safety. And it's very important that the sector follows due guidelines or regulations to ensure that it's not a sector that poses a threat because of what it brings out into the market. We all know that every year there are new products out of the market, and because of the various components that make a product, from raw materials to the storage conditions to the distribution chain, certain things affect the quality and efficacy of products. So it's important that right from the research level of a drug to the finished state of that drug, there's a series of regulatory processes that are followed. Effective regulation is therefore required to ensure the safety and efficacy of quality drugs, as well as the appropriate information that we get when these drugs are available, when these pharmaceuticals are available. Drugs must therefore be safe and effective and of good quality and used appropriately. Their development, production, importation, exportation, distribution must be regulated. There are, for example, vaccines. We don't just carry them anyhow. They have to maintain the cold chain. And if this is not regulated, the efficacy of vaccines become questionable. So what kind of functions are carried out during regulation? We have the licensing and inspecting of manufacturing facilities and their distribution channels, product assessment and registration, adverse drug reaction monitoring, control of advertising and drug promotion activities, control of clinical trials of drugs. Each of these functions targets different aspects of the pharmaceutical sector, which I have said right from the research level to the raw materials to the finished state, and even at the use by a consumer, it has to be properly regulated. There's a framework of the regulatory functions for easier understanding: licensing, inspection, product assessment, quality monitoring, and ADR monitoring. Some are administrative, some are technical, and some are regulatory. So all these come together to give us a better perspective on the regulatory system of pharmaceuticals. So why is it that there must be investment in regulation? It's important that governments provide all the necessary resources. I have heard over time some of our regulatory agencies complaining that it's difficult for them to access some terrains in the country. And for an agency like NDLEA, cultivation of the psychoactive substances happens in the very interior, difficult to reach communities. And so for them to access this, there must be available effective transportation and even communication and security and personnel, very trained personnel. So it's a total package that resources must be available for a system to have an effective regulatory system, for a country to have an effective regulatory system. Sometimes you might need to fly. Sometimes you might need speedboats and all that. So the resources that are needed, government must be fully committed to ensuring that they have them on ground, technical, administrative, and all that is needed. In fact, including ICT. Sometimes you may need a picture right in the field transmitted to the head office. So it's important that these are very much put in place because the system, like I explained, the framework are all interconnected. So you need to have effective, well-trained personnel, quality documentation, quality reporting, and all it takes for a system to be effective. Policymakers must ensure that laws made are adequately understood and capture the subject matter very well, and there is no interference when regulatory decisions have come up. For example, if a big company has fallen foul of the law, there shouldn't be some maybe backyard or background maneuvering to stop the punitive measures that may affect that company. So there must be transparency, there must be accountability, there must be effective systems, effective and up-to-date services that regulatory agencies must have in place. So what benefits do we get when the system is regulated? We have quality pharmaceutical products marketed. We have good licensed pharmaceutical facilities. You have pharmaceutical facilities meeting up with the required standards. You have illegal products identified easily, and even facilities making these illegal products identified, sealed, or even prosecuted. So benefits of regulation cannot be overemphasized. It is important that even at the level of the consumption of the products, regulation must be in place. What are the drug regulatory agencies we have in Nigeria? We have the National Agency for Drug Administration and Food Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, the Federal Ministry of Health, which also subsumes the Pharmacists Council of Nigeria, which monitors and regulates the pharmacist. The National Agency for Food, Drug and Administration, it was established by the 15th of 1993 to counter the illicit and counterfeit products in Nigeria under the country's health and safety laws. The formation of NAFDAC was inspired by a 1998 World Health Assembly resolution requesting countries to help combat the global health threat posed by counterfeit products and pharmaceuticals. So according to the requirements of the law, NAFDAC regulates and controls the importation, exportation, manufacturing, advertisement, distribution, sale and use of drugs, chemicals, medical devices, and packaged water, as well as other chemicals used for products like soaps and detergents and all that. It also conducts appropriate testing and ensures compliance with specifications designated, the good manufacturing practice, and the international standards organization certifications and all that. That takes appropriate investigations into product premises and the raw materials, which I said are a critical factor in ensuring a total safety of a product. NAFDAC undertakes inspection of the ports of entry of products into the country and establishes relevant laboratories or other institutions in strategic areas in Nigeria so that there's on-the-spot assessment of products in the laboratories. It has this Directorate Registration and Regulatory, Food Safety and Applied Nutrition, Drug Evaluation and Research, Chemical Evaluation and Research, Veterinary Medicine and Allied Products, Ports Inspection and Laboratory Services. Another agency is the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, which was established by Federal Law Decree number 48 of 1989. This agency was set up chiefly in response to the rising trend in the demand for and use of narcotics, drugs, and other psychoactive substances. NAFDAC is charged with NDLEA is charged with the drug policy, is in charge of drug policy and control in Nigeria and has the mandate to curtail the production of importation, exportation, sale, and trafficking in psychoactive substances. It carries out destruction of these substances. We keep reading in the press that NAFDAC has destroyed farms where marijuana is cultivated. NAFDAC has destroyed this number of methamphetamine factories and all that. So that's, I mean, NDLEA. So in addition, NDLEA also carries out public advocacy and campaigns, and also helps in the rehabilitation of drug users. So NDLEA is present in all ports and seaports in the country and other strategic locations on the roads. I have seen them bring down certain goods while in transit on the roads. And when they tear, I've seen where they've torn a Gary sack, and inside the Gary sack was hidden wraps of marijuana. So they're up and about, and it's quite a risky job for them. Some of them have been killed while doing this kind of assignments. Then the Pharmacists Council of Nigeria, which we're all familiar with as our regulatory body as pharmacists, responsible for our training and practice and licensing of our premises. I won't bother us with all that Pharmacists Council does. We are very familiar with this, and we know how much it's able to put in place to ensure that pharmacists are practicing right as whatever level, whether hospital, community, or other areas of our practices. So the Pharmacists Council is very much up and doing, and just yesterday, they got a world acclaimed ISO certification, which gives us the joy that yes, it has been internationally recognized as an agency that is meeting with international standards. And we celebrate the PCN for that milestone. So some of the drug laws in Nigeria, Poisons and Pharmacy Act, some are as old as 1935, but they're still relevant. The Pharmacies and Poisons and Pharmacy Act of 1946, 1947, Poisons and Pharmacy Regulations and subsidiary legislation, the NAFDAC decree, the Drugs-Related Products Decree, Drugs and Unwholesome Processed Products Decree of 1999, Dangerous Drug Decree 1935, Food and Drugs Act 1976. So we have pharmacy and drug laws guiding our practices and other international drug laws. I was very specific to us as a country and as pharmacists in Nigeria. So having listed what agencies we have in Nigeria regulating drug or pharmaceuticals, there are international organizations as well that are involved in regulation. I mentioned that NAFDAC came out because of a World Health Assembly call to nations. So the World Health Organization is also a very important regulatory agency, the Pan American Health Organization, the World Trade Center Organization, and United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, and all these other partners work together across the globe in ensuring that there's regulation. Some of them regulate drugs that are psychotropic. Some of them regulate the normal use drugs we have in the country. So we have using. So when they synergize, we have better output. And then countries have different names for their agencies. Like these are some of the regulatory agencies and their logos. The NAFDAC, our familiar friend, the Federal Ministry of Health, the Pharmacists Council of Nigeria, the NDLEA, US Food, Drug and Administration, Pan American Health Organization, United Nations Office of Drug and Crime. These emblems are shown so that we can get familiar with them, and read up more about them and all they do regarding drug and pharmaceuticals regulation. In other countries, we have different names for them. The US FDA is a very popular one we all know. For us in Nigeria, it's NAFDAC. The UK is Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. India is Central Drug Standard Control Organization. I have them listed here. I believe that the slides will be shared at the end of my presentation, and we might get familiar with the names of agencies of some countries. These are just a few examples. We have China is State Food and Drug Administration. South Africa is Medical Control Agency. These all work just the same way as our own NAFDAC works. That's why they're all partners. Now, as pharmacists, what is our role in drug regulation? How do we see ourselves working to ensure that the system is regulated? The fundamental process of our services to ensure that we have safe and appropriate use of drugs and drug products and drug-related devices. Fulfillment of this mandate is enhanced through our involvement. That's why we have the pharmaceutical care being very up and doing in recent times. You don't just hand over a product to a client. You must educate the client on storage conditions, on use, on duration, and expected reactions. If it's a sedative, you will want the patient ahead to expect certain drowsiness or certain things. So we have a very big and important role in drug safety and drug regulation. We must ensure that we supply medicines within the law. That's why some drugs require prescriptions. Some drugs require being documented. For example, oral morphine solution we use for our cancer patients. It's not just a drug you can get anyhow. It's being a very important drug. It has to be authorized for release so that there's a prescription, there's an approval, there's a documentation, there's a release, and there's a time within which a patient must come back for a second dose. If you are giving today, you cannot come back for it in 1 week. It's expected that you will use it over a period of time. So these are some of the roles we as pharmacists play. So we educate our clients better. Then we ensure that our drugs prescribed to patients are those suitable for the condition in which we have to use them. And there's no drug interference or drug reactions or drug food reactions. Then we advise our patients better on possible reactions that could come out when you use certain products. So now we know our rules, but then we are expected to have a specialized skill before we are referred to as regulatory pharmacists. So the regulatory pharmacist undertakes a specialized professional training to ensure that he has detailed understanding and detailed skills for this task. You are an interface with the government agencies and the pharmaceutical businesses to facilitate the drug's transition from the time of conception to its final approval and use. So regulatory pharmacists help to ensure that drugs and medical products meet certain requirements before they are put out into the market. For some of us that are already in this sector, we know the dossiers we keep filling and all that we need to put in place to ensure that everything is right for our companies and for Nigerian consumers. We also coordinate with other pharmaceutical scientists to facilitate drug research, plan for clinical trials, and interpret the scientific data that we get from the research work being done. So what roles do regulatory pharmacists play? They are responsible for ensuring compliance with applicable government rules and regulations. So your business, your company must comply with what is laid down. Communicate drug approval requirements, compile and submit documents to regulatory agencies, participate as a regulatory team member, review promotional and advertising materials before they are put out to the market, respond to regulatory deadlines, and coordinate with other regulatory agencies in the international sector. Also, the work of a regulatory pharmacist is very, very vital. One little mistake can cause a lot of problems. So you must be very open and very assertive. And you are expected not to compromise any standard whatsoever. You should not be seen to be playing politics or playing games. Let me put it that way. So your work and package is totally depending on your skills, your level of education, additional experiences you may have acquired, and also by the employer. So it's an area some of us could diversify and get our skills and get skills in, and also earn extra money so that we're seen to be a skilled personnel in that area. So what are the skills needed by regulatory pharmacists? Because drugs evolve every day and because laws evolve every day, pharmacists have to review documents, which some of time run into thousands of pages. So you have to have good critical thinking, and you must be versed in scientific research methods. You must be able to read and understand scientific documents. You must have excellent organizational skills. You must be focused and have eye for detail, because an oversight can lead to deleterious implications for safety. You must be able to handle stress. You must meet deadlines, and you must work with the mind to achieve targets, communicate very well, and have critical thinking skills and computer skills. In this era of ICT, you just might be very versatile in those areas, particularly because you might need to go online, and you might need to extrapolate things and all that. So these are some of the skills that are needed, and you will see that a personnel with this type of skills becomes a very sought out after person, because every organization, if these skills are identified in you, it means you're the, let me say, 10-star pharmacist they need to achieve the best for their company. So how do you become a regulatory pharmacist? It's a career you can pursue. You must gain knowledge and skills in the subfield. You must learn about regulation and products in that subfield. You have a bachelor's degree in pharmacy. You get a practical experience, either through internship or get employed and learn on the job. Then you could also complete an advanced coursework over the years and obtain a certification as a regulator. There are organizations across the globe that have formed that certify people as regulatory pharmacists, which if we make an extra effort to go online, we might identify them and get involved in being that 10-star regulatory pharmacist. So what challenges do we have in regulation? As we all know, there are a lot of people who are out there to cut corners and to ensure that we don't get our products. They give the pharmacist the bad name. Oh, she's selling fake products. Oh, she has this. I bought this, and so these are challenges that face the drug market, they also face the regulatory system. So we must have proper legislation covering products. We must ensure that medical claims of products are proven through clinical trials, and we must increase the safety of our people. So all these challenges are things our agencies face. Lack of mobility, lack of facilities to cover the terrain, lack of adequate personnel, non-release of budgetary allocations, and all that. So it's important that the government understands that the safety of the citizens is paramount. It's not just about business only, but it's about the safety. Because if there are no citizens to make use of the products being put out in the market, businesses will go down the drain. So for whatever business that is coming out, you would think of the humans or the other members of the universe, which are the plants or animals, that are going to benefit from your products, and think about them first. So people, companies, and personnel working in these organizations must remember that people have to be alive to consume their products. So safety issues are very important, and this is a very critical sector. So some companies are not able to comply with the good manufacturing practices, waste disposal. There's sometimes mixture of active ingredients, storage conditions of active ingredients are not met. So challenges are enormous in the regulatory system or the regulatory sector, but it takes real good efforts to meet up, and some companies are doing quite well in this sector. Regulatory authorities are very critical to advancing healthcare in the country. In conclusion, I will say that it's important that we think about the public first. Like I said, the public has to be available to make your business grow. So the regulatory system must always consider the safety of the consumers before and even after products have been released, before products are produced and even after products have been released. That's why there's constant monitoring, because even when products are released, we have counterfeiting, we have faking. So if you produce your products and leave it in the market and it's not able to go on surveillance to see what is there, you'll discover. I just watched a video recently of Pfizer. I'm naming Pfizer because it's out in the public domain. Raided a company in Brazil, raided an environment, I think in Brazil recently. And the staff of Pfizer themselves were finding it difficult to identify the difference between the fake products that were produced in that company and what they produce in their own company. So the man giving the report, the narration, said, if you are not an eagle-eye type, it's difficult to detect the fake. And drugs that were found in that place was like the whole company of the NAFDAC in that country was being also produced in that faking environment. And so there was absolute competition between the real and the fake. And so monies were being lost by the original makers of products. So there is important for surveillance and monitoring to be very, very up and doing in the country. And also policy medicines and strong regulatory system must go hand in hand. If you have a strong regulatory system right from the doorsteps of your factory, I believe at the end of the day, you will have good quality products out in the market. And there must be abilities to have international collaboration so that where you're lacking in strength or in incapacity, your international collaborators could lead you to a better facilitate cross-border drug control, especially in the areas of narcotics. So drug regulation cannot be overemphasized. And I wish that we as pharmacists would take this role very critically and very importantly, so that we don't fall victims to substandard products, and also we don't fall victims to somebody referring to your place as, oh, I bought something fake in that environment. So I want to conclude by saying that whether you are a regulatory pharmacist or whether you are a community pharmacist, the job is there for us to do. And we must be up to it and give the best we can concerning drug regulations. Thank you so much for listening. Good evening. These are the references.
Thank you very much, Pharmacist Lan, for this very beautiful presentation. And I'm sure we've learned a lot. We'll have just a few minutes to 10 o'clock, but I'll take just a short time to do a little recap. Before then, I want to make a few recognitions. We have Dr. Muteyat Olulawal in our midst. She's the National Secretary of Clinical Pharmacists Association of Nigeria. I can also see Dr. Lulu Ojo, and then my own professor, Professor Valentine Odibi, Lecturer, Clinical Pharmacy Department, Faculty of Pharmacy, University of Benin, and others. You all are welcome. And so as a recap, just a little one, so at least keep us abreast, especially for those who joined late. Pharmacist Lan has told us that regulation or drug regulation is geared towards safeguarding public health. The public health safety is the underlying factor here through production of safe and efficacious and also, of course, high quality medicines, devices, and generally for products that are used by the public. She also mentioned the goals of regulation, where we ensure that effective therapeutic agents are produced, and of course, also ensure that the public is protected from safe and substandard products. She told us about the structure of regulation, importance of pharmaceutical regulation, and the need for this, where we've even had tragedies in the past, drug-induced tragedies in the past. So it is important that this is done. And then the government's role, which is also pertinent, policy development, implementing these policies, providing resources, including funding, the appropriate environment, personnel, and others to ensure that regulation is a very formidable process. And of course, the system is properly put in place. Then we'll have drug regulatory bodies like she had highlighted, and also, of course, the international drug regulatory bodies as well. The role of pharmacists in drug regulation, the skills they need to acquire, challenges facing drug or affecting drug regulation. And in conclusion, she told us that regulation is a guide to ensure safe and efficacious products, that they are available to the public. And we also need strong regulatory agencies who should also collaborate with international bodies to ensure that we'll have a formidable process or regulatory system. So that, in short, is a recap of the lecture that has been given tonight. We'll have just a few minutes to 10 o'clock, but I think there should be questions from some persons. So we'll just indicate by raising our hands, and we can recognize the few persons who will recognize to ask their questions and make comments before 10 o'clock. So let's see. If we have questions, let's raise our hands. Indicate our interest, please. Any question, any comments? Okay, I can't see any hands raised. That's a very good one, Professor. Okay, sorry, Dr. Lulu Joe. Okay, sir, please unmute yourself and ask your question or give your comments. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I was finding it difficult to unmute because initially the setting was that I cannot do that. I want to thank my sister Lan for this beautiful presentation. I've been involved in regulatory work for quite some time. And just like most things that we do after school, she has highlighted the skill, the expertise needed for one to function very well in this role. And I must tell you here, from the knowledge that I have, both in and outside the pharmaceutical industry, regulatory work is by far the most important in the system, particularly if you have a relationship with the multinational company. You find out that the regulatory department is a very key, and I use the word fundamental to the health and continual activity of that organization. In the little period that I spent with the Coca-Cola system, no product can leave the premises unless the quality people say so, irrespective of what the engineer said or the production people sales or what the sales people want or the marketing people want. So that is the way it is because it is compliance really that protects the business. So for us as pharmacists, it's one area that we really need to take seriously. And like I said yesterday, when we had that fine presentation from Dr. Awufisayo, we need to do something fundamental to take this intervention by CPAN, which is very good. I mean, knowledge impartation, updating our knowledge, checking ourselves to actually even see whether we know what we are claiming to say we know. So we need to take it beyond seminars and presentation and take it to action. In this particular case, I think we need to be organizing training for our colleagues, particularly the young ones who may want to take up career in regulatory. In the next 30 days or a little more, we shall be having a training for young pharmacists who are interested, both physical and virtual. And as Lan was just talking, my mind went to one of us, Mrs. Jayola, who is very, very sound in these regulatory affairs, that I want to plead with her to come and spend some hours with these young ones and to let them know, what needs to be done before they can really be called experts in these regulatory affairs. Just to summarize, wonderful discussion, wonderful points from Lan. But please, as an organization, CPAN, let us now be hardened to what we are doing. How do we translate this that we are to an action point that we help the profession to take over, those areas that are fundamental to our business?
Thank you so much, Dr. Ojo.
Yes,
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Lulu Ojo, for your submission. I was just told that Professor Bola Joko Aina of University of Lagos Faculty of Pharmacy is also here in the meeting. You're very welcome, ma. Our time is almost up. Sorry for those people who are raising their hands already. We can't take you. I'll at this stage call on Pharmacist Folashade Lawal. I think she's here to help us with the closing remarks and vote of thanks. If she's here, please. If she's not, then Dr. Ibrahim, you can please help us with that so that we can wrap up. Dr. Ibrahim, please help us with the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Pharmacist Folashade Lawal is not here, please.
Okay. We want to thank God Almighty for making this edition of our training possible again. We thank Him for the grace. And we thank Him again for the progress we are recording in our training. Most especially, we thank our speakers and our moderator and all the members of the group that work on this project. We thank you all. And we thank every participant that have spared their time to be part of this meeting. We pray to God Almighty to continue to bless us individually, to bless our group. Amen. We thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
End of it. Thank you.
Okay.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, everyone.
Next Sunday. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good night,
bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night,
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Pharmacist Plan, thank you very much. We are meeting you in Lagos.
I will be there. Thank you so much. Good evening, ma. Good night, everyone. Bye.